This podcast is presented by Skies Magazine. If you're interested in the Canadian aviation industry, Skies is your go-to multimedia resource for the latest news, in-depth features, stunning photography, and insightful video coverage. Whether you're an aviation professional or enthusiast, Skies is dedicated to keeping you informed and bringing your passion for aviation to life. Visit skiesmag.com to learn more and subscribe to stay updated on all things Canadian aviation.
Hey everybody, this is your host Brian Morrison with a graphic content warning. This episode contains the vivid description of the death of a child. While we considered removing this portion of the show, we wanted to convey the realities of what search and rescue crews regularly deal with. It is a life and death business, and we wanted to stay true to that. However, if you would rather not hear it, this occurs following the discussion on the difficulties of remaining emotionally detached from the mission. This happens from minute 30 to minute 30 and 8 seconds. With that being said, please enjoy the show.
Fuel and ignition switches on. RPM switches set. PD switches normal. Doors and hatches closed. Lay down. Strobe light on. Restart check is complete. Clear left. Engineers, start number 2. Starting 2. Wind 310, Pilot Project Podcast, clear takeoff, runway 31 left.
All right, we're ready for departure here at the Pilot Project Podcast, the best source for stories and advice from RCAF and mission aviation pilots, brought to you by Skies Magazine. I'm your host, Brian Morrison, and today we are doing a very special on-location interview in 19 Wing Comox, BC, with Lieutenant Colonel Francois Fasquelle, CO of 442 Transport and Rescue Squadron, Lieutenant Colonel Luc C, CO of 418 Search and Rescue Operational Training Squadron, and Major Dan Faux, a qualified Kingfisher pilot who is a subject matter expert on the C-295. Gentlemen, welcome to the show, and thank you for having me here in 19 Wing.
Thanks for having us.
Today, we will be talking about our 3 guests' early careers and flight training experience, and then we'll be diving into an in-depth conversation about the C-295 Kingfisher. Something I always like to establish is what started you down the road of pursuing aviation as a career. So where did that start for you all?
Aviation as a career. I would say when I was very young, it's a funny one, I had a real keen obsession with machines. Everything I saw in my house growing up, chainsaws, to eventually begging for motorbikes and bikes and heavy equipment and driving the cars around the driveway when I was 12. And 4x4s. And one of those machines was in the basement. I got to look up in the rafters and see all these kind of old remote control airplanes, and my dad and his brother had a real fascination with planes. And basically, truly, the start of it was I asked him to drag a plane out of the the rafters, and could we please put it together as remote control, start flying it. It became one of those projects. And he did, and we did, and got together and started building and crashing planes for the next several years and learning and trying to make my own. And, that's kind of what got going there. Plus, like I said, my dad and his brother, they got into a couple old private aircraft. Super exciting for me to tag along. Like, we pulled a almost moss-covered plane out of a field at Victoria Airport, a Blanca Cruiser Senior. They got to fly in a short period of time, and I remember riding in the back seat of it, being like scared and excited at the same time that they had got it going and it was flying. And it kind of went from there. It just, love of machines, flying got built into that, and it built into eventually signing up to be a pilot.
Really? That's awesome. That's like a very unique answer. I haven't heard one yet where it started with like remote control aircraft and just a love of machines and stuff. So that's really cool. What about you, Francois?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about aviation. I jumped into a recruiting center one day completely randomly. I was really good in science back in high school, so I went to the recruiting center. I said, hey, I'm interested in a job. They said, well, you're good in science. Do you want to become an engineer? I became an engineer in the military, an aerospace engineer. And a few years after, with some background here as an engineer, I swapped to pilot. There's a bit of a story there, actually. So I was working back in Ottawa, and I had a bit of a dream, like a daydream, where I was flying a helicopter and doing SAR in that daydream. And I came back to the office a few days after, and I said, I want to swap to to search and rescue. So I went search and rescue, and I've been flying ever since.
That's awesome. How about you, Luke?
When I was a kid, I remember my grandfather telling me stories of him flying the Lancaster in World War II as a pilot officer. And when he would tell me these stories, his eyes would light up with joy and passion. He had a great experience, a highlight of his life. And that really inspired me, got me curious about flying. Just like Dan, I also love everything remote control and cars and operating any equipment. The combination of both led me to want to be a pilot in the RCF.
Wow. So it's kind of in your blood a little.
Perhaps.
Yeah. For Dan and Francois, what brought each of you to the CAF to pursue that career in aviation?
I didn't have the idea in my mind growing up at all to be in the military. I will say that my grandfather, my mother's father, served in World War II. He was an absolutely amazing person. So he was a mosquito mechanic. I'd say that was an inspiration that probably solidified the idea anyway, but I would say it was pretty random. I was preparing to go to UVic. What I wanted to do was engineering there. I also love business and stocks, whatnot as well. But I was heading there, and I heard a commercial on the radio that kind of outlined you could do the same thing, but paid for and have no debts come out of the other end. And that pretty much, listening to that little radio, I think I was going to clean a pool. I was like a pool boy for work. And I was like, man, that's not a bad plan. I called them up, and it was all in a very short order period. Like, called them up, they're like, you are late. In a week, we're putting people on to go or something. They're like, we'll check, come in tomorrow. And then the whole thing was sort of flash to bang in days. And they're like, it's working, you're going. And I'm like, oh, wow. So no time to think, basically.
That's
I called
crazy.
up. I remember the person saying, like, yes or no on the literal phone call. I'm like, you got to be kidding. Like, okay, I'm going to call you back in the morning. And I guess that's their tactic or something. And I was like, anyway, the next morning I said, yes. And then I told my folks, I think, kind of at that point, and my parents were like, what?
Did they know you'd applied?
They knew I applied, but I think, my mom, she's amazing. And she's probably like, we're a tight family. Oh my gosh, he's leaving is probably the primary thought, right? He's going. So
For sure.
that was sad, but they've been very happy for me, I'd say. It was that simple.
It's crazy that it worked out that well, because you're like right place, right time. So many people who want to join the pilot trade end up waiting years sometimes, right? Like, I got in really easily, same thing, right place, right time. My buddy applied a few months later. I think it was like 3 years before he got in.
I'll say for the future prospects that, for the audience, they said, sounds good, but guess what? You could probably be a pilot in the future. For now, you're in the armor. And so actually, they sent me to be in the armor, get ready to have some fun with tanks. And I said, okay, well, pilot's what I'm looking for. And they said, that's not a problem. Just go there and tell them you want to be a pilot once you get there. There's obviously a story behind that, but by about a year later, through hook and crook and a little bit of poking and pushing, they did switch me over.
That's crazy.
Yeah, 1-for-1 swap actually with somebody who read like a John Grisham book about commanding tanks, decided they didn't want to be a pilot. And I was like, I would like to be a pilot. So we did a 1-for-1 swap. So
I've known Dan for 15 years, and already in 5 minutes, I know more of you.
yeah, yeah, good fortune, luck is a part of it. Work is a part of it.
And what about you, Francois?
Yeah, well, I was like, the CAF itself, the CAF in military aviation is kind of two different answers there. The CAF, I just wanted to step into something that was meaningful. So as an engineer, I just deployed to Bosnia. I was the flight commander there. And when I came back, I switched to pilot really because of the operational sense of purpose. I had a choice at some point in my career to switch to civilian pilot. I also looked at even becoming a professional rock climber, which is unrelated to CAF.
Really?
Yeah, and we could get into the details later on. But eventually I went to the pilot side of things just for that operational purpose and the team aspect of working together with professionals.
Okay. When each of you look back on your early days of flight training, what is the biggest lesson that each of you learned that you carried forward with you as pilots? Do you want to start, Francois?
Sure, yeah. I think like two things stick out. First, respect your limits and respect the limits of the aircraft. That's something that I learned very early on in my career. And B, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So those are the two things that stick out from early aviation career.
Yeah. And that having fun lesson is so important because it's so easy to get really stressed out, or you're working extremely hard in the pilot world, and you can really start to feel worn down and forget like this is an amazing job.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
How about you, Luc?
I would say the time prepping for flights ahead of time, being ready, studying, pays dividend.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest lessons that I still carry to this day when I go fly. I want to make sure I'm ready, and then you feel much better, you perform better, you have more fun, because I also agree, you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. Big proponent of that, but you still have to put the work into it.
100%. Yeah, walking into a flight unprepared is a super uncomfortable feeling, and you won't make it very far if that's how you're doing things. Like some people maybe early in their training can get by on raw talent, but that only takes you so far, especially once you're operational.
And it's unfair to your other crew members on board,
100%.
right? They expect you to deliver to bring a lot of effort and to perform to the max of your abilities. And if you're not doing that, it's unfair to them.
Yeah, I agree. How about you, Dan?
I agree with everything they said. And maybe the one thing I'll add in, and I think it took me through, I had to get a little bit older to figure it out, but there's a feedback mechanism. When you're going to learn accepting fault with the people you're working with and being positive and engaged with the people teaching you and around you, like showing respect to your peers and instructors and listening to them and doing your best to sort of put your ego aside, because it's very personal in pilot training. They're like, we went out today. These are the things that you need to do to improve. And it took me time to like meditate my way to the point where I'm listening properly. I'm there, I'm taking in what they're saying. And you know what? They were in a good position to watch, and now I'll go attack the problem, as opposed to working in my own mind to say like, well, I don't know if it was quite like that. And that's how I entered training. And I think I exited with this like total relief in realizing that if I just accept it, but then work hard and start attacking what their issues were and what they want me to do, it was this incredible feedback mechanism. Because I'd walk in the instructor the next day and be like, I can see that you listened. I can see that you studied. And this is amazing. Let's go try it again. And sure enough, their advice often worked, and we'd go, and they felt good. I felt good. It's a funny thing, right? It works in university. It was the same.
Yeah.
You engage the teacher and they're like, wow, you're interested. And then they're interested in you. And I try to teach that, to my family, my kids. I mean, that loop is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's a snippet. I totally agree with what those guys said. But for me, learning to learn has been a big deal too.
Yeah. And going back to what you're saying about like when you receive that criticism, it's really challenging at first, but like the best thing you can say when your instructor tells you what you did wrong is like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and go and work on that. Like, don't try to convince yourself why it really wasn't that big a deal, or here's what I was thinking and that's why it's okay. Because it's really tempting to like make excuses.
Yeah.
But you just have to accept like, this is their way. We're going to do it their way. And that's what you have to do.
Yeah. Maybe clarify in a positive way. Like,
sure,
you don't have to just pander to it, but reiterate, is this what you mean? And get more from them maybe, but roll with them and do it for them.
Yeah.
I would say even when you're at the top of your game, flying lots, higher rank, standards for the whole fleet, I would still go and ask the most junior person on the crew if there's anything I could do to improve on, or anything that they might have seen. And they often have great points. And you can always get much better, more effective, safer. I think it becomes dangerous if you want to create that environment where people feel comfortable mentioning, things that could have been done better, even if it's a much higher rank or much more senior person. It's very important to have that culture. And if you think you're done learning or know everything, it's probably time for you to hang up the flying gloves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical.
It's good to try and embrace that culture of always self-improving and listening to everyone.
Yeah, that's why we debrief after every flight, right?
Exactly.
So now we're going to dive into more of each of your careers, starting with Francois.
Lieutenant Colonel Francois Fasquelle graduated from the Royal Military College in 2000. After completing aerospace engineering officer training, he was posted to 430 Tactical Helicopter Squadron, becoming the Deputy Squadron Air Maintenance Engineering Officer. He deployed to Bosnia in 2001 as the maintenance flight commander of the NATO Griffin Detachment and was responsible for humanitarian projects in northern Bosnia. Upon completing a postgraduate degree from Laval University in 2006, Francois was posted to Ottawa and charged with the management of several research and development projects. In 2008, he was nominated as Executive Assistant to the Director General of Aerospace Engineering Program Management and continued in this role for nearly 2 years. In 2009, he was selected for an occupation transfer to pilot. Upon flight training graduation, Francois was posted to 442 Search and Rescue Squadron in Comox, BC to fly the CH-149 Cormorant helicopter. Throughout a 5-year period, he held the positions of Unit Flight Safety Officer and Pilot Lead and completed numerous challenging search and rescue missions on Canada's mountainous west coast. In 2016, Francois was posted to Gander, Newfoundland, appointed as Deputy Commanding Officer of 103 SAR Squadron, and followed on to assume command of the squadron in 2018. Over the course of 3 years, he continued to perform as aircraft commander on the CH-149 Cormorant and was responsible to lead the SAR Squadron in the demanding operational environment of the East Coast and Arctic. In 2019, Francois was posted to the Directorate of Air Requirements, assigned as Deputy Project Director of the Cormorant Midlife Upgrade, as well as Project Director of several minor capital acquisition projects. He was assigned in 2022 to the Canadian Joint Operations Command as J3 SAR, where he extensively coordinated with all SAR CAF entities, other government departments, and international partners, ensuring that the SAR mandate remained at the forefront of Canadian operations and policies. He is currently the commanding officer of 442 SAR and Transport Squadron, and amongst other challenges, led the implementation and operationalization of the new C-295 Kingfisher fixed-wing SAR aircraft in the Victoria Search and Rescue region, standing up the first main operating base across Canada. Francois is a graduate of the Joint Command and Staff program. He holds a bachelor's degree in space sciences, a master in electro-optical engineering, and a master in defense studies. He has completed 140 operational SAR missions and is a licensed commercial airplane pilot and airline transport helicopter pilot. Francois is extremely privileged to have the support of his wonderful spouse, Marie-Eve, and 2 awesome children, Delia and Antoine.
So Francois, you deployed to Bosnia in 2001 as the maintenance flight commander of the NATO Griffin Detachment. What was that experience like for you?
It was very unique. I was extremely young, right out of university. The contingent was deployed the day 9/11 happened. I vividly remember that. So the morning of 9/11, we were in Trenton an hour before embarking in the Airbus, the military Airbus, to go to Bosnia. 9/11 had just happened, and we looked at each other like, okay, either we're not going or we're going in a hurry and into a war zone. We ended up, so as you know, all the airways were blocked off in the world. The day after, the airways opened up only for military flight. So we got into Bosnia the day after, so 24 hours after. And then, yeah, it was a very immersive experience. I was a lieutenant, a young lieutenant. I learned leadership. So I was a flight commander. I was leading techs. I had aircraft to manage and so on. I learned from my CO there. I learned from my master warrant officer. I remember him, an old crusty master warrant officer, Slater. I remember his name, Tony Slater. For me, he was probably like 75 years old, but in reality, he was probably 58 or something. Yeah. I learned immensely from him. He taught me the basic of leadership. I loved it. I also was involved in humanitarian aid in northern Bosnia, so that gave me a different perspective. It allowed me to understand that Canada, here, we are privileged. We are one of the most beautiful and peaceful country on earth. Bosnia and Kosovo had just been destroyed by war. We were rebuilding it. We were taking care of the country, so it was an eye-opening. But I learned leadership. I learned teamwork. An anecdote from that is, so I was deployed for 7 months, and during longer deployments, you have an LTA where you can leave for 2 weeks, relax somewhere, and I went on to Australia for 2 weeks, and out there, and you need to think this is like 2001, so this is before like the beards and the long hair, so this was and we were on an infantry camp in Bosnia. I went to Australia with 2 buddies, and I bleached my hair orange, like bright orange, like Ronald McDonald orange. I came back on the camp after that LTA, and the colonel, who was a Vendu, an infantryman, saw me, and with a JAG, they wanted to RTB me to Canada. They were like, no, that aviator, that young lieutenant, we do not want that person on the camp. He is rebellious and so on. So my CO stepped up and said, look, I'm going to take care of this young Lieutenant Fasquelle. He has orange hair right now. We'll shave him completely off. We still need him in Bosnia. We will not return him to Canada. So that evening, I shaved my hair to like zero, like completely bald. But in a sign of teamwork, all the other aircrew of the helicopter detachment shaved their hair as well. So we were a bunch of like 15 people, completely shaved hair. We stepped into the cafeteria the next morning and things went on fire at that point, because now that the camp, the infantry people thought that we were being rebellious against the infantry officers. So again, the CO stepped in, protected his people, and things went on. But it was an interesting way of learning military life. Let's put it that way. And I learned from the leadership of that CO back then.
I was going to say, it sounds like you had some really good mentors.
Yeah, fantastic. They took care of their people, and that's what I try to strive to now as a CO.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, we've talked about the fact that you switched from an aerospace engineer to a pilot. Did you find it challenging to switch from a support to an operator mindset?
No, I actually had zero problems, honestly.
Yeah.
My nature is very decisive driven. I'm a rock climber. Like on my personal life, I'm a rock climber. So I deal with risk management, with decisions, with time factors and so on. So actually being an engineer was a bit of a challenge to me. I had talent, I was good in school, but I felt that as an engineer, things wouldn't improve or wouldn't go forward as fast as I'd like to. So doing the switch to an operational pilot in the military was actually, it was like a little fish in a bowl. I was happy. I was able now to manage risk, to lead crews, both tactically and operationally. So no issues there at all.
Yeah, it gave you a chance for more of like a hands-on, decisive experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the engineering background helped me make those decisions as an operational tactical aviator.
How would you say that was? Like, in what ways did it help you?
Well, I now understood the processes behind the engineering decisions, the designs of an aircraft, the procedures, the policies, the regulations. Just an example, like why does an MEL exist?
For the listeners, an MEL is a minimum equipment list and is basically a list of the minimum equipment that you must have functional to go flying.
And why those items are listed and in what order and so on. So all that background information that stems from an engineering support, I was able to understand and explain to my crew and make decisions, highlighted decisions based on the background of that engineering.
Yeah, so it kind of gave you like a broader breadth of experience and an ability to kind of understand the reasons, what's going on behind the curtain and why those decisions are made.
Yeah, I understand the aircraft, the policies, and there's the MELs. So in SAR, we're obviously bound to all the aviation regulations, but we are able to temporarily deviate from a certain rule if it's to save a life.
Yeah.
But that decision cannot be taken lightly, and it needs to be justified if we need to deviate from a rule to save a life. So I think that engineering background allowed me to make some decisions in my career that were justifiable to save a life.
Okay.
When Francois and I were young captains together on Squadron, sometimes we would have engineers tell us that limitations would change, or we would have whatever changes came down for XY reasons, and Francois was able to explain to us why this was happening and the reasoning behind it, and it just helped us accept and understand the reasons, and would have more buy-in. So it was nice to have someone to bridge the gap between engineers and operators.
It kind of gives you that warm fuzzy when they're telling you something, and then you can kind of buy into it when you actually understand why and what's
100%.
going on.
Like why are they all of a sudden putting this limitation on us, which is frustrating as an operator. You don't want it. And then Francois really takes time to explain it to an operator, and like, oh.
Or even the opposite of that, when it's like, why are they suddenly willing to accept this risk? Like, why is this okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, bang on.
Your first operational posting was here in Comox at 442 Transport and Rescue Squadron, flying the CH-149 Cormorant. What were those early days like for you as a pilot?
Learning to become an aircraft commander really was the highlight of it, obviously. but learning to fly the machine in the mountains. I was brought into the mountains. This is the only thing I knew, so I understood. I tried to learn to become one with the machine, with the asset in the mountains, and to manage risk as well. So flying in the mountains like you did last night or yesterday afternoon at a sunset is a safe environment. But now to prosecute a SAR mission at night in steep valleys, on night vision goggles, in less than ideal weather conditions, on bingo fuel, and so on and so on. So that was my first experience of understanding the limitations of my personal limits, the limitations of my crew, the limitations and the capabilities of the asset, and just learning to lead tactically and to tap into the subject matter experts of the aircrew and to prosecute a mission safely and effectively.
Yeah. So yesterday, for the listeners, I was lucky enough to go for a flight on the 295, and having a chance to see the terrain and see the places you guys operate, I was blown away because it's beautiful. Like you said, it was an evening flight. The weather was good. The air was calm, and it was almost like sightseeing. But I can only imagine in rough conditions at night, going and operating in those environments, it must be really intimidating, especially at first.
Yeah, and it speaks to training. We train our crews immensely. So I didn't jump into the tightest of the valleys early on in my career, but with experience, with training, with respect, with step-by-step processes, you're able to push the capability with always keeping an out. And that's what I learned early on in my career is becoming one. And I know it's kind of cliche, but becoming one with the machine and the crew, and understanding the power of teamwork and trusting your team leader, your team member, the co-pilot, the flight engineer, and prosecuting a mission safely, and being able to turn down a mission if it's going to be unsafe.
Right.
So, and that is, I think, the biggest learning point that I learned early on is sometimes you have to say no to a mission. It's not often that we turn down a mission, but sometimes you have to say no because the danger is just too elevated.
That must be a really tough call to make.
It's super tough. It's one of the toughest. Yeah.
Yeah, the first time is very hard. I found for myself, the first time turning down a mission, it goes against everything in you, but it does get easier as your career goes on. And keeping your crew safe and bringing folks back home safe is priority number one.
And I would imagine that you become more comfortable with weighing risk, and as you gain experience, you kind of know, that this is one of those missions where we just can't do this.
Yeah, exactly. You see many missions throughout a career, so eventually, intuitively, if you can do that mission or not, and you don't need to really explain it to anyone. You know that mission can be prosecuted safely, or right away no, this is not going to happen tonight because of XX factors. Yeah. And so maybe back to that original question, what did I learn? I also learned to cope with emotions. People look at SAR as these platforms, whether it's the helicopter or the fixed wing, where we save people, but it's not, unfortunately, always the case. And I'm looking at Luc here, and maybe Luc doesn't really remember this one, but one of my first missions as a co-pilot, Luc was the aircraft commander. We went on to do a mission, and the father of a very young girl had drowned. So at the time, I had young kids at home, and I kind of put myself in the shoes of the mother that saw the father drown, and so on and so on. Emotionally, that drained me that night. So I learned to cope with some situations that are not always favorable.
Do you remember that one?
Is that the one in the Straits not far from here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember it well. But for sure, having kids now, I have 3 kids of my own, and that was before I had kids. And missions do affect you differently after you have children of your own.
Yeah, I've heard that from quite a few people in the SAR world, that the hardest thing is when there's kids involved in some way, whether they're the person you're looking for or it's their mom or dad or what have you, that especially if you have kids, that is extremely difficult. From what I understand, people do learn to try to separate themselves from the emotional side of missions, and maybe you guys can speak to that. But it sounds like there are certain situations where it's really difficult to do that.
Yeah, I think in real time during the SAR mission, during the tasking itself, most people, I'll speak for myself, I guess, most people are able to focus on the mission and put the emotions aside and really be objective and prosecute the mission. It's after the fact. Once you've landed, once you've debriefed, I think of one mission again, like this was a 14-year-old girl back in Newfoundland that had fallen off a cliff. She opened up her skull and was deceased. So we brought the body back, but I'll always remember that image of this 14-year-old girl in a white dress at the base of a cliff in a bit of a water pool. That was really hard for me after the mission because my daughter was 12 years old back home. So there was that emotional link, but it only became apparent to me after the mission was finished when I went back home.
How did you process that?
Oof. And now that I think about it, it's pretty tough. Yeah. Just talking about it, hugging my kids.
Compartmentalizing. Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah. So, and my wife's super supportive as well. So yeah, it's talking about it and actually having buddies like Dan and Luc. And we all go through the same career. We all try to save lives to the best of our capabilities, but sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. So sharing stories, I think, is probably the best way of coping with that emotion.
Helping to process the grief and
Therapy. To me, that's how I think of it. Speaking out loud generally is therapeutic for me to the right people.
Yeah.
Just soundboarding it off of somebody.
Yeah. When it's like a safe place with people you trust and who can understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Your second tour on the Cormorant was to 103 Search and Rescue Squadron in Gander, Newfoundland as the Deputy Commanding Officer in 2016. You assumed command of the squadron for your next posting in 2018. Now, isn't it pretty rare for someone to go directly from DCO to CO in the same unit?
So actually in 103, it's a bit of a trend. In the last 10 years, I'd say, the DCO has normally or historically been DCO for either 1 or 2 years and become the CO.
So it's almost more of like succession planning.
Yeah,
there.
succession planning. 103 Squadron in Gander, Newfoundland is a very unique area to work in. Challenging weather conditions. The North Atlantic is unreal. Like I had never imagined something as ferocious as the Northern Atlantic. So it comes, and 103 Squadron is an operation. It's a smaller operational base. Missions are very frequent as well. So all that to say, the DCO has historically become the CO based on the experience built as the DCO.
Okay.
So it's not something unique. Very humbling for me. I came from the mountainous background where I became very proficient in mountains. I was able to do SAR in some complex terrain, topography, and weather. And the morning I stepped foot at 103 in Gander, extremely humbling. And I'll always remember my first operational mission in the Atlantic, and it was nothing complicated. It was like day, VFR, just normal, quote unquote, weather. But this fishing boat was just being rocked like I had never imagined. And I arrived to the stern of it in the rest, so helicopter kind of coming to a hover position just off of the vessel. And this vessel was going up and down maybe 10, 15 feet, smaller fishing vessel. And you have 2 crew members on the deck holding to one portion of the vessel being rocked. And I looked at the vessel, I was wondering, how am I going to put a SARTech on that boat? For me, it was impossible. It was so humbling, but step by step, working with a flight engineer and understanding how those boats work, how they dance with the seas, became a reality. And after a year or 2, I became very comfortable in that environment.
Okay. The Atlantic is crazy. Like I flew the Aurora in Greenwood, so I didn't see it from a SAR perspective, but it was the power of that water is amazing. Like we would do flights sometimes and we'd be at 1,500 feet and we'd come back covered in salt spray and need to take the Aurora through the bird bath. Like it is crazy. Your last posting before being back here as CO of 442 Squadron was J3 SAR officer at Canadian Joint Operations Command, or CJOC.
Can you translate J3 SAR into plain speak for us and tell us about that job?
Yeah, for sure. So CJOC, the Operational Command, is the force employment entity of the Canadian Armed Forces. They employ everything that has to do with domestic employment and expeditionary. So J3 SAR so search and rescue falls under the force employment of that command. So the role of the J3 SAR is first to look at all the policies, regulations, make sure that SAR is still up to the standard of international policies. The search and rescue regions fall under the operational control of the commander of CJOC as well. So all that is taken care of. We also accumulate historical statistics to make sure that SAR is still relevant, to see if new equipment is required, if the SAR posture needs to be modified. We write the search and rescue directive for Canada. So things like that. We work with Canadian Coast Guard partners. SAR is a systems of systems in Canada, so it's not only the CAF. Actually, the CAF is just a small portion of SAR, but SAR is federal, provincial, municipal, regional, private, and so on and so on. So we keep all of those stakeholders together, and we make sure that we network, that all SAR partners are in lockstep to make sure that SAR in Canada is as efficient as it is. And I can speak from my witness perspective as J3 SAR, Canada is of the highest standard in the world. Like many countries look at Canada as the goal to be in SAR.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. As J3 SAR, how did coordinating all SAR CAF entities, other government departments, and international partners prepare you to be the CO of a search and rescue squadron?
It prepared me very well, immensely. Honestly, knowing the protocols, knowing the policies, understanding why SAR exists, how it exists, the 5 Ws essentially of SAR gave me that perspective that as a CO 442, I can explain to the crews at 442 why we do SAR, why we have a posture, why it's a 24/7 posture. So all the reasoning behind SAR, how it was implemented since the 1940s, all stems to how I could explain, lead, and take care of the personnel. And decisions are still being made in real time from the CJOC perspective. So I'm able to translate that to the tactical aircrew and the technicians and explain why we've changed the posture or why the government has decided to modify a SAR aspect of things.
Okay, so almost similar to when you had your background from being an airie and then becoming a pilot, like it sort of gave you that breadth of knowledge.
Absolutely, 100%, yeah, exactly.
So circling around to kind of the big reason we're here today, which is to talk about the 295. As a helicopter pilot, how are you ensuring you are well informed with the world of fixed-wing operations when it comes to operating the C-295?
I do it by osmosis. I'm personally, I'm very interested to self-educate myself. The Kingfisher has been in a transition up until the 1st of May 2025, so I've learned a lot about the Kingfisher. Before making a decision, I want to make sure that that decision is justified and it's educated, so I will rely on my subject matter experts if needed before making a decision, making sure that the people are taken care of. So really self-educating, being back in CJOC and having I was also posted at the Directorate of Air Requirements back a few years before CJOC. So that gave me the PMO aspect of things, the project officer aspect of things, and with the CJOC aspect as well. All integrating that information allows me to make decisions focused on the fixed-wing SAR.
Okay. So thanks for all that, Francois. That was awesome. We're going to move on and talk to Luc.
Lieutenant Colonel Luc Coates was born in Rocky Mountain House, Alberta, and moved to Gatineau, Quebec at the age of 5, where he stayed until he finished high school. Inspired by his grandfather, a pilot officer during World War II, he joined the Canadian Armed Forces at the age of 17. He graduated from the Royal Military College in 2006 with a bachelor's degree in computer science. After completing pilot training, Luc was posted to 442 Transport and Rescue Squadron in 2009, where he eventually became an aircraft commander on the CH-149 Cormorant. In 2013, he was posted to 103 Search and Rescue Squadron in Gander, Newfoundland, serving as the operations officer and chief check pilot. In 2017, he was promoted to the rank of major and posted back to Comox, where he joined the SAR Standards and Evaluation Team as the National Standard Evaluator for the CH-149 Cormorant fleet. In 2020, he had the privilege of becoming the Commandant of the Canadian Forces School of Search and Rescue, or SAR, and accumulated 100 parachute jumps. Luc is nearing 4,000 flying hours and has completed over 150 SAR missions. Promoted to his current rank in 2023, he spent the last year earning a Master of Defense Studies from RMC. An avid outdoor enthusiast, he enjoys mountain biking, snowboarding, camping, and floating down the Puntledge River. Luc's favorite pastime is spending time with his family, his wife Megan, and their 3 daughters, Lennon, Mei-Li, and Lumi.
Luc, you have over 3,500 hours on the CH-149 Cormorant and have completed over 150 SAR missions. That's a ton of experience. What is the biggest lesson you've learned about conducting SAR operations?
It's funny, as you ask me that question, there are 2 individuals that come to mind. One is Sergeant Dan Corkery, a very experienced flight engineer that Francois and I both had the pleasure to serve and work with in Gander, Newfoundland at 103 Squadron. Very, very experienced flight engineer. Even though he remained at the rank of sergeant, he mentored, I would say, every officer that went through there. There's him, and then there's Sergeant Steph Clavette, a senior SAR tech, currently at CIVSAR, Canadian Forces School of Search and Rescue. And they both taught me the same lesson, which, and Steph would say it is slow, smooth, and smooth is fast.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest lesson where, you know, you're pretty motivated to get in there quickly, get the job done as fast as you can, get the person to the hospital. However, when you rush and are trying to conduct the mission quicker, it ends up being slower and riskier and things don't go as planned.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest lesson. And that I can see being debriefed by Dan, even though I was the aircraft commander, he said it politely, but that we rushed into it perhaps a bit more. Maybe I was comfortable with the speed that I was going at, but perhaps some other crew members were not. Another great lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Steph. So just to go in one step at a time, ensuring comms are super clear with everybody, you end up being a lot more effective and a lot faster.
For sure. And I think for listeners, especially those who are in the pilot world, that saying, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, it is a favorite of mine for a long time now. It's just so true. Like, you will make extra mistakes when you rush. Absolutely you will. Like, everyone wants to be timely when it comes to a time-sensitive tasking, but there's a difference between working quickly and efficiently and actually rushing. And then you skip steps or you make mistakes and it takes you much longer than it would have if you just went at a reasonable pace.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, intuitively, you want to go quick.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to force yourself to slow down, but better results occur once you slow down.
Yeah, totally. What's the biggest difference between conducting your first rescue missions versus now with so many missions under your belt?
So I felt so grateful to be accepted and become a first officer as a CH-149 Cormorant pilot. And I remember, I will kind of age myself here, we had pagers then. And I remember my pager going off for the first time. And I was so pumped, like I raised my arm, I was by myself in my house, raised my hands in the air. I was like, felt like I won the Stanley Cup or won the lottery. I was like, yeah, I was so pumped. And then going in, and I remember the mission very well. And the aircraft commander at the time, I had to do a medevac in Northern Community, Northern BC. But just being so pumped. Now and also at that time, the worse the weather was, the more challenging the weather it was, the most offshore is what I wanted and what excited me the most. As I become older, have, 3 children of my own, scared myself a few times,
Mm-hmm.
got humbled many times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still as pumped to get missions. However, if it happens to be on a nicer day or maybe a little bit simpler, I prefer those.
See the beauty in it.
Yeah, or the very hairy, sketchy ones. So
Yeah.
let's say perhaps I just got wiser over time. That's a big difference, but
Yeah.
still as pumped.
Yep.
But just evolved over time.
Yeah, I think that's pretty natural. I think if you spoke with most, especially I think most people who have kids, but all of us think we're immortal when you're in your 20s or early 30s, right? Like, And then you sort of, like you said, you scare yourself a couple of times, you have a few growth experiences, and you realize like, okay, there's only so much risk that I really want to take.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how you mentioned that. When I had my first child in Gander, Newfoundland, and before that, missions where you said it affected you emotionally. Before, they really did not affect me. After having kids, I all of a sudden realized that, oh man, I am not immortal. Like I can pass away, and if that happens, it has like serious consequences. And that actually played in my head for a little bit, between that and scaring herself a bit more. And even at one point, I even had to go talk to someone for a little bit, which I wish I'd done before. Because I thought as soon as you talk to someone, if you're having some issues with it, they stopped you from flying, which is not the case at all. And I try and educate a lot of junior crew members, how do you deal with it? Sometimes it's good to talk about with friends, but also maybe it's good to talk with a professional.
Yeah.
And we do have lots of, we're lucky now in the CAF, right? The narrative on this has changed. There's lots of options for us to talk, a lot of professionals. And it didn't take very much, a few sessions. It really helped me out. I wish I would have done it sooner though.
Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of therapy and talking to somebody. It can be such a huge weight off your shoulders. And SIFMAP is a great program. You've got so many options. Like if you need to talk, you've got your friends. You've got SIFMAP, which is the Canadian Forces Members Assistance Program, which is free.
For those listeners who are serving members, their families, you can access SIFMAP by Googling CFMAP or by calling 1-800-268-7708. You can call that number 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and it is a free service that is confidential.
You've got the mental health resources on base. And like you said, I think a big misconception people have is like, oh, if I have any problems, if I need to talk to somebody, like I'm screwed. My life's over. It's going to ruin my career. I'll be grounded.
Not the case.
No, nobody wants you grounded. Like the forces needs its pilots, and they put a lot of money and time into you, and it's nobody's goal to ground you.
Yeah, exactly.
You served as the commandant of the Canadian Forces School of Search and Rescue, or SIFSAR. What did you learn there that prepared you to be in a leadership role in the development of SAR aircrew?
SIFSAR was a great place to work. I had the pleasure of working beside professionals for 3 years there. I believe I got a lot of mentoring done. There are a lot of great leaders at SIFSAR. It's a well-oiled machine. The school runs on its own. I had some very strong master warrant officers, MWO Bitterman, who's a chief now, and MWO Chris Lamoth, who almost did more mentoring. Well, no, they for sure mentored me way more than what I gave to them. I remember even talking to both of them, like, man, they were contributing to my learning a lot more than I was to them. I got to see how a school is properly ran. So I learned a lot on leadership, dealing also with a lot of type A personalities, but just motivated folks that want to get the job done. It helped me become a much better leader, a bit more comfortable with myself. Sometimes having to say no to folks who are have strong personalities, very driven. You gain a bit more as a leader. And that transferred well as my role here at 14 Squadron, because it's a newer school, it's a new platform. Things aren't running as smoothly, but I know what a well-run school is, so it does help me strive so that we achieve that standard as well.
Right. And you say things aren't running as smoothly, but you mean like as a natural consequence of a new platform? And
yes, exactly. SIFSAR has been running the same cookie cutter courses it's been going since 44 was our course number 1.
Okay.
And so they have time to evolve and get good here. Yes, it's because it's a brand new capability. We're still learning the aircraft. We are producing high-level aviators and maintainers, but we can get more efficient.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can always better ourselves. So
yeah, for sure. You have earned 2 RCAF commendations, one of which was for a challenging rescue of an injured sailor 150 miles west of Port Hardy. Can you take us through that story?
Yeah, absolutely. Your task, an injured sailor off a vessel at night. Weather was solid IFR. We took off from Comox. We were instantly, right after takeoff, into the goo. Couldn't see anything. Unfortunately, there was no serviceable fixed wing assets. to provide us top cover.
Was this during the time of the buff, or was it?
It was buff, yeah, buff time. So buff couldn't come. Auroras, they checked with them. They couldn't make it on time. We would have had to wait till the next day, so it didn't make sense. We opted to go right away. And on the way there, we had some a generator electrical issues where we lost a lot of our autopilots, radar.
Oh, wow.
A bunch of equipment. And it's funny because I remember going down to our minimum equipment list and having discussions with Francois on what you need and don't need. And we were just okay. We had just the minimum amount of equipment to legally do this in a mission. And like in training, we would never push that far.
For sure.
And then it was a challenging hoist at night, no illumination. The hardest thing for a cormorant pilot is at night and in bad weather is you have no horizon. So you have this big ship that's moving up and down by like 30, 40 feet, banking left and right. And then all of a sudden you're like, am I the one who's moving up or down? Or is it the vessel? It's super easy to get your gyros mixed up, especially when you don't have all the autopilots working for you. So that was quite challenging. You really have to, I really have to fight to rely on my attitude indicator and other equipment that I had left. But we did get the job done safely. We got the injured sailor to Victoria. And then we got the job done, went home, and lived to fly another day.
Was that like, how scared were you? Was that a scary one? Or were you just focused on getting it done?
It was maybe a little bit scary, but it wasn't. I've had some other much scarier moments.
Yeah. Okay.
It was challenging.
Yeah.
It was more challenging than scary.
Yeah. I guess like you were really stripped down in capability.
Capability. I remember being a bit nervous lowering the SARTEX onto the vessel because I didn't have all the autopilots, so I wasn't as stable.
Right. And I've heard winching is like 100% about being a stable platform.
Yes, when you're not as stable and you have a SARTEC 130 feet beneath you, if you start moving around, it will exponentially move it's like a pendulum at the bottom, right? It will start moving him a lot more, but it ended up working out.
Awesome. So you qualified on the Kingfisher to better understand crew experiences. Still, traditionally, you're a cormorant pilot. So how are you ensuring we are training to employ these aircraft in the best manner possible?
As we talked about earlier at the beginning there of the podcast, I am an operator at heart. I love to fly. And I'm a big believer in leading from the front. So the best way for me to understand this aircraft, to fight for changes that need to occur and to gain a bit more credibility amongst engineers and operators, was to learn it myself and to go through the training program that we have new wing grads go through. So I went through the program myself, learned a lot. I was at that point, because I've been through the training system so much, I was able to find efficiencies. So the course is running a bit smoother. Also, when we're trying to liaise with engineers on issues that operators are experiencing, I have my voice, I have a lot more weight because I'm like, I've experienced this myself.
Yeah, you've gained credibility. Like when we were talking about the buses coming offline. I can explain a bit more because I'm like, I've seen it. It's not good. So you just have more credibility when you speak, and so it makes you a bit more efficient at affecting change. As well as a CO, being a light colonel, I find that when I go around and try and talk to the troops, it's a bit hard to get a finger on the pulse, really, because it's the first time I notice now that the conversations change, and there's a good reason for that. However, when you're in the aircraft as a crew member, you really get a good feel for how things are going in the squadron, for sure,
how morale is. Any issues coming up, you become almost like a spy. You're just embedded with the group, and that's it.
Well, because there's like flying is kind of the great equalizer, right? Like
100%.
Rank is for the most part left at the door, and
it is 100% left.
Everybody's part of the crew now. And like you talked earlier about how you would have like the least ranked member of the crew should still be debriefing you on things. So there's a more even exchange of information.
Absolutely. And now I'm like the newest and less proficient person on the crew. So it's very humbling, but it's great. I love it. And it's great to see some young crew members rise and mentor me and teach me. It's awesome. And above all, keeping it fun. I'm having a blast doing it. I feel very lucky that I got to learn the Kingfisher at this point in my career. Very blessed, loving every minute of it.
Yeah, it is like, speaking from experience yesterday, like getting a chance to check out the sims, go for a flight. It's an amazing aircraft. So yeah, you guys are fortunate.
Yeah, the CAF has a lot of great opportunities. Like I've had tremendous luck, but many, if you're interested in joining, there's lots of great avenues. A lot of you can have a lot of fun in this career.
If I'll say this, if I was still in, I would be wishing for a slot on the Kingfisher. Like that plane is really, really impressive.
You're sold.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, we're running a little short on time, so we are going to ask Dan his questions in the next episode and move straight into the final questions for this episode.
What is the most important thing each of you does to stay ready to do your job?
I often tell members here at 14 Squadron that if things are not good for you home in your personal life, how am I going to expect you to perform well at work? So it's keeping that balance, making sure you get proper sleep hygiene. It sounds it's like a lot of common sense, but sleep hygiene, working out, being in the moment, spending time with your family and friends, not making work all of your life, having other hobbies, being well-rounded, and focusing on, realizing your own limits as well. Sometimes you need to take a little step back or slow down. If you can remain well-rounded, I believe it keeps you well prepared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Francois?
I think communication is key, so I try to keep comms channels open as much as possible. That really helps. Trust your team, empower your team. That's something that I always focus on. And for me, keep flying. I fly quite a bit as a commanding officer. That allows me to stay proficient, to stay credible, to understand who I'm working with. Because like we said already, flying brings everyone to the common denominator. You can actually see the essence of the human nature when you're in a SAR role, and continue to mentor junior members, essentially.
Okay. How about you, Dan?
Me, on a personal level, I'm going to just almost combine their answers and say that definitely first and foremost is be ready, as in happy and sort it out on your own time. So if you have something in the background that's getting at you, this is me I'm talking about, it needs to be solved. But I'm pretty good at taking action. So if I have to change in my life, I've made big changes. Do what you have to do, but don't let it linger. Solve that problem. And then secondly is just too simple. It's fly. You have to be proficient. There's nothing worse than the stress of getting into a situation where you start to realize I'm only just keeping up because I need to be quite a bit ahead right now, not be focused at all on flying. And I have hit that point in the past, and I'll say it's not great, and it's important to be proficient.
I agree with that. And I think everybody's been there at some point. I found I used to get that sometimes if it had been a while since I ran emergencies in the sim. And I'd go to my next sim and I'd be kind of have almost an anxiety built up, but then you go and tackle it and you feel great because now you have that confidence that you're proficient, and if anything happens, you know how to handle it. And
absolutely,
you and your crew are tight. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
What do you guys think makes a great SAR pilot, whether that be fixed wing or rotary?
Put simply, I just think open-mindedness from the crew. And that goes to everybody from the AC down, but that you are flying with your crew, listening to their input, because, you got to catch sometimes the smallest inputs amount to something important. So I think it's really important that people are humble and listen to what people are saying. You have to, in the end, make a decision. From an aircraft commander role, somebody has to make a decision. So at the end, you have to do that. But I just think that the entire crew is open to the situation and logical, take a step forward and make a decision.
Okay. Francois?
What makes a great SAR pilot? Definitely not Luke's mustache earlier this year. That was terrible. No, I think flexibility and fluidity. So no, let's start off with training. Training, calmness, experience makes a good SAR pilot, and staying flexible and fluid. SAR is anything but scripted, so you need to stay, to take Dan's words, open-minded. Over planning sometimes can actually backfire, and I've seen it in SAR. If you over plan, you're now painting yourself in a corner. So almost procrastination by design when you get a SAR tasking actually will help you to open up to the fluidity and the flexibility of that SAR tasking.
Are you saying, like, just so I understand, basically, like, if you cover too many contingencies ahead of time, like, if this happens, I'll do this. If this happens, then it stops you from remaining open-minded to
That's
kind of
exactly
how you need to react.
Yeah. You summarize it really well. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say in the SAR environment, nothing ever goes to plan, or in my experience anyway. So if you just pre-plan everything, it's almost for nothing, because it won't happen that way. And then you'll, as Francois said, start painting yourself to go this route, which may not be necessarily the route you should take. So
Yeah, and I've seen aircrew that come either from a different background or their nature is different, and they're comfortable in planning, but then they cannot deviate from that plan based on the SAR situation, and they're just unable to adapt. And that's a very big problem. So you need to build a very basic framework for a SAR situation, but no more than that, and evolve as the plan unfolds.
Okay. Do you have more to add?
no, just be mentally resilient, always striving to better yourself, open-minded. Those are the three key points.
Awesome. What advice would you give to a listener who is in training and wants to be a SAR pilot?
Just same thing that we just said. Stay open-minded, have fun. I can't focus enough on that. Have fun, and be prepared for anything. SAR is there's no pre-described situation. It can be anything from day, night, boats, mountains, Arctic, domestic airspace. So just stay open-minded.
Okay.
I would say it would help you if you perform very well during your pilot phase training, as in normally the top students get the top picks. I'm not sure if it still works that way.
Last time I heard, yeah.
Yeah. So if you finish first or second on your course and there's some SAR spots available, you will definitely increase your chances on becoming a SAR pilot, which I think it's the best place to be.
So light a fire in your belly. If you're coming up to your phase 1 or phase 2 course,
phase 2, yeah.
Take it seriously, work hard.
Exactly. Use it as motivation to perform better.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends that fly other platforms, and I think a lot of them from there, where they sit, their standing is that their platform is amazing, and I'm sure it is, but if you're planning to be a SAR pilot, I think you will have zero regrets. It's just a fabulous job, amazing community, very rewarding. You just kind of can't go wrong. I think it's great, even all the way down to your family. We'll say good work to you.
Awesome.
Yeah. We are lucky. If you talk to, I'd say, most SAR operators and maintainers, like the level of work satisfaction is very high. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to think of someone who made it through SAR in whatever capacity. I'd say everyone pretty much enjoys it. So we're very lucky. It's a very rewarding and fun and meaningful job.
Yeah. I don't think I've met anyone working in SAR who didn't love it.
I'm biased, so I didn't want to say it that way, but I agree.
So just to wrap this up, what is something the public should know about what SAR crews do that maybe doesn't make the headlines?
I would say that SAR crews are out training a lot. We spend so much time training, and if anybody is coming into a situation where SAR is going to be required, say it quick, say it before it's a huge problem, because our assets and all the teams, all the way from the RCAF to Marine to GSAR, are all standing by and excited and ready and prepped to do it. So if anybody ever has the idea that they don't want to make that call, if this is, for the public, I would say make it while something's not too big of a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, that's going to wrap up part one of our chat for today. I really want to thank you for having me here. I really enjoyed hearing about your flight training and getting some of your insights of the SAR world. And I'm really looking forward to talking all things 295 for the next one. So thank you guys very much.
All right, that wraps up part one of our chat with Luc, Francois, and Dan. Tune into our next episode to hear all about Dan's involvement in the search and rescue world and the path that led him to the 295, as well as some in-depth questions on the 295 Kingfisher. Do you have any questions or comments about anything you've heard in this show? Would you or someone you know make a great guest, or do you have a great idea for a show? You can reach out to us at thepilotprojectpodcast@gmail.com or on all social media at @podpilotproject. And be sure to check out that social media for lots of great videos of our RCAF and mission aviation aircraft. As always, we'd like to thank you for tuning in and ask for your help with the big three. That's like and follow us on social media, share with your friends, and follow and rate us 5 stars wherever you get your podcasts. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Keep the blue side up. See ya!
Engineer, shut down all 4. Shutting down all 4 engines.